Hello, today is June 26, 2022. It is a Sunday, and that means it's time for another episode of Misfits of the Galaxy, a vlog series in which I ramble and amble about various thoughts and ideas I have about making a campaign for my fellow members of the Isle of Misfit Rolls podcast. If you haven't heard of us before, I'll put links down below. We've recently transitioned over to a Twitch live stream format that happens typically every Tuesday between 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 11:30, sometimes 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So if you're interested, we'd love to have you. That's just one of the various media formats that we are available in. We're in our second season right now, and the stakes have gotten significantly higher in this one. So do tune in if you're interested. Uh, so this is the 26th episode on the 26th of June, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyways, today what I am going to discuss are some hazards in the verse at large, and the reason I thought I'd discuss hazards is because when you go to a planet you've never been to before, or part of the verse at large, there are more hazards than just monsters. The first hazard that comes to mind is extreme weather conditions, and we've all encountered that to some degree or another in our D&D, or at least I hope we have. I know that in one of the more recent campaigns that came out, if I recall, I think it's the what's the name of it again? Hold on, one second. Adventures. Sorry, this is taking a moment. I think there might be some extreme weather conditions in several of the tales of the Yawning Portal, as well as there should be some in the Descent into Avernus. And finally, Icewind Dale, Rim of the Frost Maiden. If anyone's played in any of those campaigns, or in the Yawning Portals case, the adventures that are located within, they have undoubtedly come across some extreme temperature conditions and know the mechanics. They're found in the DMG and are readily available to anyone who wishes to use them in their campaign. On a side note, they can be extremely dangerous to characters who are ill prepared for them, as I think the cold weather, or the cold ones, as well as the heat based ones, cause exhaustion levels every so often, and that can kill a character dead without even getting into some serious without having to take into consideration how many hit points they have or anything like that. I know that there's been talk that Dark Sun might make a reemergence in 5th edition, which case will be interesting to see because they'll have to bring the extreme heat temperature rules back into the limelight. But anyways, I digress. So with that in mind, I put together a few other environmental conditions, or I should say environmental hazards that characters may encounter while traversing the verse. A lot of these can be found in the Dark Matter core rule book, or hardcover book, that is published by Mage Hand Press, formerly known as the Middle Finger of Vecna. I'll put a link to their website down below. This vlog isn't sponsored by them in any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. It's just that I've really enjoyed their content up to this point, and I see no reason why not to continue promoting content that I really like. If I only have one grievance against the company, is that they're slow on responding to inquiries from customers. But that's a story for another time. So the one that I think I've spoken to about previously is the Dead Magic Zones. Now, Dead Magic Zones effectively work like a anti-magic zone. uh, which are, I think they're found in the DMG, and I know that a few of them are found in Forgotten Realms. I just don't know if offhandedly if it's in any of the campaign modules or any of the other books for the Forgotten Realms that have come out for 5th edition at this present time. So what that means is spells, magical items, and magitech just don't work in magic zones. Additionally, constructs are paralyzed, even if they would normally be immune to the paralyzed condition. The Vec are a little different though, because just like Warforged, they're a living construct, and as a result of that, they're not fully disabled in a dead magic zone. But they often start stuttering, and their movements become a bit glitchy or clunkety, and they gain a level of exhaustion that cannot be removed while in a dead magic zone. Clearly, these zones make them exceedingly uncomfortable, and they'd rather not be there. But in case they ever end up there by accident, these are the rules to be played by. Ships cannot move, and all their systems are fully disabled, including life support, which is a big thing. Thankfully, even the void crystals that are used to power a dark matter engine become inert. Otherwise, there would be a catastrophe in the engine core on a ship. Now, the exception to this is Gnomish technology. A ship that is based off of Gnomish technology is based off of scientific principles rather than magitech and magic. So therefore, they can operate as per normal in a dead magic zone. They're typically a bit slower than your average ship. Just give a heads up, as they use science rather than magic to power their dark matter engines. And they have a weird way of building or amassing similar energy outputs to those of void crystals, hence why their dark matter engines would still work in dead magic zone space. So it could be a very unpleasant, as I said, a very unpleasant encounter for the characters for their ship all of a sudden to find themselves there, or them to find themselves marooned on a on a planet that's a dead magic zone. They will have to rely on their more martially gifted adventuring companions. Not to mention, they very likely will be ill-equipped to survive the dangers that can be found on such a world, as most of their weapons and the like will be of like magitech or magical items or stuff similar. Could be a cool plot hook though if they have to go to a planet in a dead magic zone for some reason or other, maybe on a rescue mission to rescue some elven prince or princess, or maybe maybe a dwarven thane. An expedition went out that way, not realizing there was a dead magic zone, and so one of the dwarven thanes recruits the adventurers to go forth and see what happened to his dwarven expedition, sort of deal. I think those, like I said, interesting plot hooks to say the very least. The next major obstacle or hazard that characters might encounter is gravity. Because when we're dealing with the verse, we're dealing with all sorts of different gravity. The first is zero gravity. While the ships themselves are able to produce gravity, and when they're in close proximity to one another, there's a bit like they can share a gravitational field. If they're in close enough proximity to one another, allowing for ship-to-ship combat and the like. The reality is, most of the verse is a zero gravity environment when you're out in space, meaning that this is it's like whenever your ship loses power, everything inside is gonna like lose gravity. And if somebody decides to make a spacewalk beyond the ship, they'll be there as well. Uh, so objects will hang in midair along with people until they are moved. Uh, a creature can move in a zero gravity environment only by pushing and pulling against a fixed object. So, like pushing against the hull of the ship, or another surface of something within reach. And it's treated as if they are climbing. So, whatever their climbing speed would be, which is normally half that of a regular character or regular movement, uh, that's when that's how much movement space you would have, or I should say that's how much movement you could do in a single round. That would mean that some species that have a natural climbing speed are more skilled at functioning in a zero gravity environment, which kind of makes sense because I can see like a tabaxi like knowing how to maneuver around in a zero G environment a lot better than, like, let's say, a dwarf. Also, a note is that flight isn't taken into consideration in a zero G environment, and that's because you cannot build up there's no resistance to your wings, so therefore you cannot use them to propel yourself per se. Um, so, unless you are climbing and you're using a surface, your movement speed is considered to be zero. However, once you've put a creature or object into motion, it won't stop moving until it collides with another person or object. You just continue moving at the same speed in the same direction every round until you come to a stop. That's kind of the idea as to how zero gravity works. Needless to say, trying to do a lot of different actions in a zero gravity environment will result in disadvantage to set rolls, because a lot of characters will know, like, will find it impossible to do certain tasks that, like, for example, I'm going to try to write something using ink and a quill. That's not going to work in a zero in a zero gravity environment, not unless you do some pretty clever thinking per se. Hence why the disadvantage would be imposed. Low gravity. Low gravity is a little better. A lot of like smaller moons, asteroids, and other planetoids would have a low gravity environment, uh, which means that there is still a pull, but it's not nearly as potent as, like, I guess you call it 1G, which is what we deal with here. So think like the moon. When if you've ever watched videos of the moon landing or what have you. So all creatures have their weights halved. Additionally, all objects have their weights halved while in a low gravity environment, meaning that a creature can carry a lot more on their back in a low G environment. Additionally, creatures can jump twice as far at distance as well as height while in this environment, and they take half damage from falls because you're less likely to get as hurt in a low G environment. Uh, Also, I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to make it so that creatures with a natural flight speed, like the Aarakocra and that, can wear heavier armor while in a low gravity environment. I think that would be a distinct possibility, because they're one of the restrictions that they had was they could not fly when they were wearing certain types of armor. I think it was like like heavy armor and what have you, and I think that would be done away with if if the weight and burden of said armor did not exist in the environment they now found themselves. High gravity environments. Well, a lot of dwarves might find themselves in high in what they claimed excuse me, claim to be high gravity environments, but the reality is, when I mean a high gravity environment, I mean like a super dense world, maybe even close proximity to a black hole or something like that, where it will actually pull a ship into its gravitational pull. It's that potent. Um, while you're in a high gravity environment, uh, you have to spend 2 feet of movement for every 1 foot. So basically, your movement has been halved. And this includes flying, jumping, and climbing. Additionally, it can be combined with difficult terrain. So if you're trying to like traverse up the side of a mountain in a high gravity world, you're very light. So it's your 1 foot of movement will actually cost you 3, meaning that it'll take forever to get anywhere per se, because your average character's got like 30 foot, so it's like 10 feet around, sort of deal. Additionally, if a prone creature wants to stand up, they have to make a strength check, DC 12 to clamber out. On a failure, you just kind of like sprawled out there, exhausted, as your body, your muscles are just unwilling to help you with the possibility of trying to stand once more. Everything, the weight is doubled on everything, creatures, objects, items, you name it, and therefore you can become quite encumbered very quickly. And it can cause spells that have a weight restriction, like levitate, to fail, and you take double damage from falling in a high gravity world. Falls are very dangerous. And then we have, of course, extreme gravity. Extreme gravity is like you are in the orbit of a black hole or something like that. It's not only does it have all the penalties of high gravity, but you're making all your strength and dexterity ability checks and saving throws at disadvantage, and you're taking damage every round, bludgeoning damage, just from the sheer force of the gravity around you. It's based on your size, no less. Like a smaller creature will take like a D4, and a medium will take a D6, and the die goes up with each size category, and that happens every round with bludgeoning damage. And so, like, you can die very quickly if you find yourself in a extreme high gravity environment. I'm hoping it never actually occurs in the game, to be perfectly honest, because like if the characters find themselves in that sort of situation where they're that close to a source of a extreme high gravity, chances say their things are not going too well for them. I'm tempted to put some in detail when it comes to the gravity. I'm looking at the subclass that came out for the wizard, the School of Magic, the graviturgy magic, which is all supposed to be about gravity and what have you. And I'm curious. I'm thinking of playing around with taking these hazards and somehow including them into that subclass in some way. I might have to do a little bit of house rule tweaking on that. I haven't decided yet. I'm playing around with the idea, and I'd love some opinions on that. Uh, let's see what else we got here. We have radiation. Um, radiation. Well, radiation and radiant damage kind of go hand in hand. So since radiant damage is kind of like radiation, and just pulling the trigger on a spell pistol can to suddenly cause an output of radiant damage on something, you can imagine long-term exposure, what sort of havoc that might cause on someone or something. So it's just as deadly in short bursts as it is in long-term exposure. So every minute a creature spends in a radioactive environment, they have to make a con save DC 15 or be poisoned for 1 hour. And in addition to that, their maximum they take 5 points of damage, or I should say, their maximum hit points are reduced by 5 for the duration of them being poisoned. And then they at the end of that hour, or that's per minute, and the next minute they have to make another save. And if they fail that save, it's cumulative. So let's say you failed three saving throws. You would have you would have the poison status effect for 3 hours. Additionally, you would be your permanent or your maximum number of hit points would be reduced by 15 for the duration of your poison status effect. If you get down to 0, you die. Also, when you recover from radiation damage, you need to roll a d20. On a 1, while the poison status is removed, the maximum hit point reduction is not. So this is to explain like the the side effects of radiation poisoning, the illnesses and the like that can occur afterwards. Naturally, a greater restoration spell or similar magic can be used to remove said detriment from a character. I didn't want to go into too much detail as to like what the radiation sickness would be like and everything else, because I know that some people have had family members undoubtedly who have succumbed to the big C and other things similar to that. I personally have lost quite a few family and friends to it, and I know that it can be a very uncomfortable subject. So I might just say that it's magical radiation instead, and just call it a day, and try to avoid that subject entirely. It's kind of like it's an X card subject for a lot of people, and I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable when I'm running the game or while they listen to the game, so or play in it. Anyways, I digress again. I apologize. And the other hazard that I came out that I'm dealing with is the vacuum of space. Um, yes, space is a vacuum. Until I have the opportunity to go over the Spelljammer rules, which are supposed to be coming out in August, and see if they've made any changes to what space is made up of. Because I know in the older Spelljammer there were some interesting rules for the AD&D Second Edition. I'm curious as to what's going to happen now. So this last one might be omitted, depending on what the mechanics are like in Spelljammer, for 5th edition. But for now, it's kind of like drowning. You can hold your breath for a number of rounds equal to 1 plus your Constitution modifier to a minimum of 2 rounds. After which your hit points immediately drop to 0 and you start dying. You can a creature with a breathing apparatus or some additional ability that allows them to like like with enhanced like breathing mechanics, like the lizard folk or the turtle or something similar that can hold their breath for a significant amount of time, or even a air genasi who just doesn't need to breathe, um, would not have to make these rolls until that particular duration runs out. However, they would still be subject to the extreme temperature problems, either extreme heat or extreme cold, or both simultaneously while in the vacuum of space. It could cause all sorts of nightmares. Finally, of course, casting a spell with a verbal component in space is just impossible. In space, no one can hear you scream. Ha ha ha. Got to put that reference in there. So yeah, those are four types of hazards that environmental hazards that I kind of am playing around with in the campaign. I'll definitely be using the dead magic zone as well as the gravity thing. I don't know about the radiation and the vacuum. I'd love to hear some thoughts on those. As I said, vacuum might be replaced based on what comes out for Spelljammer, and radiation, it's just that entire, like I said, it could make some people uncomfortable. Regardless, I've rambled for over 25 minutes now. I hope anyone who's listening enjoys it and can provide me with some insight and input into the matter. Uh, if not, that's fine. I record these mostly for personal use, anyways, and but it's always fun to get somebody else's opinion on things. So, till next time, may all your d20s roll a critical. Take care.